There was a lot of dark comedy about this campaign because of the abnormally high bouts of friendly fire. One has to ask, just whose side were they really on at this point? This was now so commonplace with the Confederate Army that a situation developed where General Polk was almost captured because of it. Here we go with one of the most interesting stories of the Perryville Battle that led to the most casualties during a single volley in the entire conflict. Bragg's plan of catching McCook's corps in the large pincer movement was sorta kinda working at this point. McCook's men were slowly being forced into a large mass at the Dixville Crossroads. At this crossroads, it is where the Benton Road and Mackville Road met. Come along with us as Bragg tries to put his plan into final action. All aboard the Kentucky-Tennessee Living Time Machine. Please fasten your seatbelts and keep your arms and legs inside of the vehicle at all times. But to get going, we need your help. We still need to fire up that time machine to transport us. Please help us by clicking on the like, subscribe, and bell notification buttons down below. Not only does this fire up the time machine for our flight back in time, but it convinces the YouTube algorithm that we need a bigger vehicle to reach more people who love history as much as you do. Now, back to our story. The failed ultimate plan of General Bragg. Bragg's plan was to basically gather McCook's troops into one large manageable group and cut them off from any hope of escape. The Union troops were being pushed backward from their lines through the pincer movements that Bragg had his men to execute. It was the plan to have the Union troops driven to form a large mass of men at the Dixville Crossroads. Bragg had it in his plan for his troops to get around the right wing of McCook's troops to cut them off from joining up with the rest of the army. But there was a problem. The movement of men began to slow down at Russell House, as Union brigades of Captain Samuel J. Harris and Colonel William H. Little had formed a temporary line there, thus slowing down the southern jaw of the pincer. The attack of Confederate Brigadier General Patrick R. Claiborne and Brigadier General Daniel W. Adams had now ground to a halt. Colonel John C. Starkweather's defensive line had proved effective and had stopped the northern jaw of the pincer. There were other attacks that happened north of Mackville Road by two fresh brigades from Major General Simon Buckner's division. These divisions were under the commands of Brigadier General St. John R. Liddell and Brigadier General Sterling A. M. Wood. The initial target. Colonel George Webster's 34th Brigade of the Jackson's Division was the initial target of the Confederate assault. Colonel Webster was mortally wounded during the course of the attack. Webster's death was the final senior officer loss for the 10th Division. The 10th Division had already lost Jackson and Terrell. A bit of spooky foreshadowing here. Evidently, the previous evening before the battle had taken place, Jackson, Terrell, and Webster had discussed what would happen should all three of them become mortally wounded during the battle. They dismissed this morbid thought because it would be statistically impossible in their eyes. Little did they know that this would indeed happen and all three would lose their lives the following day. Another major target in this battle was the Union supply wagons. While the Dixville Crossroads was an important tactical point of the battlefield, as it would cut McCook off from the rest of the army, it was also the place that Buell had his major supply wagons stationed. These wagons just about fell into Confederate hands during the battle. The fighting continues. Posted on a hill near Benton Road was Webster's infantry and Captain Harris's artillery. They were successful in decimating Wood's attackers, but were eventually forced to pull back from their position. The two divisions did regroup at the base of the hill and was able to renew their assault on Wood's attackers. Captain Harris had to have his artillery withdraw from the assault when the ammunition ran low. Because of this, Webster's infantry was pushed back to the Dixville Crossroads. At this point, Colonel Michael Gooding's 13th Brigade, Mitchell's Division, joined the field of battle from Gilbert's Corps. Goodings arrived late in the day because he came from the west of town and down to the Dixville Crossroads. But as the saying goes, this was truly a better late than never situation. McCook's men were being hammered and were almost at the point that the survivors were going to be captured. Gooding's men arrived at the site of the battle and took on heavy losses during the fighting. Gooding was wounded during the battle, and he would lose one-third of his men. But the Dixville Crossroads remained uncaptured by the Confederate Army, and the Union was able to keep their supply wagons. Brigadier General Sterling A.M. Wood's men were replaced with Liddell's division and withdrew from the battle. McCook calls for aid. McCook called for aid a little late in the battle. At 2:30 p.m., he sent a staff officer to Sheridan on Peters Hill, requesting that he secure the First Corps' right flank. At 3 p.m., McCook sent another staff officer to the nearest Third Corps for help. The officer encountered Brigadier General Alvin F. Schoepf, commanding the 1st Division, the Third Corps Reserve. Unwilling to make the decision on his own, Schoepf sent the officer to Gilbert. Gilbert then referred the officer to Buell, who was 2 miles away, for the decision to be made. By 4 p.m. that evening, the staff officer finally arrived at Buell's headquarters. Buell was shocked that there was even a battle taking place, as he had ordered his men not to engage with the Confederate troops. Also, from his distance, he had not heard any sounds of the battle taking place. So, not completely believing that there was a Confederate assault underway, Buell ordered 2 brigades from Schoepf's division to support the First Corps. Friendly fire? Shaking my head. You just have to wonder why some people are in command at this point in the battle. Just about everywhere on the battlefield was one Confederate unit firing upon another Confederate unit. And perhaps this has now become so expected that we have the following situation. In the heat of the battle, Liddell's division began firing upon an unknown division of men. These men were less than 100 yards or 91 meters east of the Dixville Crossroads. All of a sudden, there was heard, quote, "You're firing upon friends. For God's sake, stop," unquote. Confederate Wing Commander Leonidas Polk got on his horse and decided to go see who was being fired upon. Imagine this, if you will. He didn't send a scout. He didn't send a lower officer. He went out there himself in heavily Union-dense part of this battle. By mistake, Polk ran slap into the Union 22nd Indiana. Bluffing and riding his way down the Union line, Polk ordered the Union men to cease fire, which amazingly, they did just that. After being able to escape this near miss, Polk went back to Liddell's division and told them to open fire upon the Union troops. Hundreds of muskets flew in a single volley. This horrible raining down of muskets caused the death of Colonel Squire Keith and 65% of the 22nd Indiana casualties. This would be the highest percentage of men wounded or dead in a single assault during the Battle of Perryville. Liddell wanted to continue the assault, but Polk was now shaken by his close encounter with the 22nd Indiana. So, Polk blamed the setting of the sun and the darkness to come for the reason why the attack should not continue and the men be pursued. The Union Army now had moved their supplies and their lines onto a chain of hills 200 yards or 180 meters northwest of their starting positions. Even though McCook's men were not destroyed, they had taken on heavy damages and losses. In next week's video, we will be covering the John Russell House. We are doing a separate video on this because, like Bottom's Farm, the property took on heavy damage and was the center of the fighting during the battle. Thank you. Kentucky Tennessee Living would like to thank you for watching our video series on the Appalachian Civil War battles. Don't forget to hit that like button, as the more likes we receive, the more likely YouTube is to suggest our videos to other viewers. Also, to receive notice when we upload a new video, be sure to subscribe and click the bell notification button. Please be sure to double check that you are subscribed, as some of our viewers are finding that they are no longer subscribed to our channel. We thank you for continuing to support Kentucky Tennessee Living as we are discovering the mysteries in Appalachian history.